Good morning to the US. Hello, Rich. Hello, Michael.
Good morning,
Hey,
Herr
Martin.
Swager.
Yes,
Hey, Martin.
Schwarzenegger. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear
Just
me?
fine.
I hear you loud and clear. You're very loud. It's good.
Who are you talking to?
Uh, can you
All
hear
of
me?
us.
Yeah, I hear you. Rich, you're loud and clear.
Okay, good.
Um, Same for Michael. Michael, are you on your treadmill again?
No. Hey, Martin, I don't, when I do 4x4, I don't do the treadmill. You're making this up. Your imagination is lucrative.
No, okay. I'm just remember the old days when you were on the treadmill.
No, that was 4 years ago, and back then I was multitasking. I'd have my laptop, my phone, everything turned on, and
Yeah.
on my
And
treadmill.
and your internet was at the limit with the bandwidth because you downloaded very important F-35 projects. There's someone in the background, I believe. No? Hello?
Hi.
Yes, I'm good. Yeah. Hey, Rich, you asked
Yes.
what are my four criterias for evaluating the world's state, the geopolitical state, and I just put I've I've trained a custom GPT, and there's someone in the background.
Oh, that's probably me. I'm at the hotel restaurant area, so
Ah,
I'll
okay.
I'll
Yeah,
mute. So
no worries. So I have trained a custom GPT with the four criteria or the three criteria for evaluating the geopolitical state of the world, and I put it in the 4x4 LinkedIn group, and you can compare any date after start of the Iran war with with each other. So, for example, you can compare the outbreak, which was the 1st of March 2026, with the 7th of March, which is today, and the chatbot would tell you objective differences based on DeepSeek researches in uh, newspaper publications, and it's not based on the headlines, but based on contents and actual facts that are there. And I found it quite amazing what ChatGPT can do because they have enabled internet search, and I've given it a list of 15 different newspapers to evaluate for facts that are published there, and it would sort out uh, or try to sort out propaganda from real news that are there. And I've done this because my grandmothers and grandfathers and older friends that lived throughout the World War II time, they told me that even by evaluating the systems press releases, you could find out how the German army had to withdraw from the Eastern Front in Russia and also from the Western Front in France and the Southern Front in Italy. So even by following the the government influenced publications, you could see what is happening if you just are patient enough to plot what is mentioned in the small size releases, and I've trained a ChatGPT to do exactly that, and it's quite telling. So it's not getting better. Is more or less constant, and that's also what dominates the knowledge here, or what is going on in Singapore, because there is sorry to fall back to geopolitics again, but there's now a regional government meeting of the Southeast Asian nations taking place in the Philippines in Cebu, and what I can tell already is that the the mood is not good because Southeast Asia and is cut off from energy supply from the Middle East, and that makes I would say 90% or 95% of the energy supply in Asia. And I have seen even headlines that say that the whole of Southeast Asia is pushed towards China and not US because, yeah, so that is what is currently going on here. And of course, that has also an impact on innovation. And my other half is in Germany. And I've talked with a patent attorney in Germany, and he said that he talked with many colleagues. So we are both more or less the same age, so in the 50s. And he says that many of his colleagues tell him that many of the small and medium-sized enterprises in Germany, they're leaving Germany, just shut down and open somewhere else. For example, in Poland, because he's very active in Poland, so he knows that. And um, and when you follow, I mean, I can only follow YouTube, right? Because this is my main outlet because it's the most common reports of what happens in the German media is also found there. And I give half an hour each day or so to click around what is going on in Germany. And you can visibly see how the country disintegrates itself. And I find it quite depressing when I watch it from far. Roland is here in the meantime. Maybe you can tell us more about that because I believe the two belong together. Because innovation always happens where there is an abundance or there's a scarcity at the same time. So you have a global scarcity for something and a local abundance in one hand, and that may be created by an individual who has too much time, but still all is governed by the general mood and by people who look after what are the bleeding necks of the others around me. So, Roland, can you please tell us more from Germany, and then we hear what is going on in the US?
Yeah, before I do that, allow please one short question. You mentioned you did this, you posted this survey in the LinkedIn group. I don't find it.
Oh, wait, let me see. It's not a survey, it's a link to
Yeah,
a link to a custom GPT,
yeah.
and I can see it. I can see it. So it's
Where's that? Oh yeah, here I got. Yeah, now I got it. Now I got it. Okay, sorry, overlooked it previously. Okay, back to your original question. Yes, of course, there's some sort of industry shakeout. Small and medium-sized companies. Well, you have been outlining the problems lying ahead and being faced right now for 2 years right now. The turmoil in the automobile industry and especially the impact on the suppliers, the small suppliers. Yes, this has come in full force. What you said about cost pressures is certainly correct. I think this week or last week I heard news that Mercedes-Benz or Mercedes Daimler Truck, it's called now, will open a new plant in Poland. There would have been equivalent spaces right across the corner right across the border in Germany, but probably the lower standards or requirements concerning bureaucracy made Daimler choose the site in Poland. I can't comment on that. There is a lot of innovation in Germany going on. I witnessed that when looking at the startup scene. There seems to be lots of money around in the startup scene. Not surprisingly, in environmental technology, urban technology, and especially not surprising in military technology. Lots of startups going to the starting line right now. So I think my summary is there's really some sort of industry transformation, coming to grips with geopolitical realities, new realities. So our whole safety system has changed within the last 2 years. And yeah, especially the Iran war, which started, when was it? 1 month ago. We lost track of time, so to say, has changed everything. Disruption of chains of raw materials, especially crude oil. Yeah, everything has a heavy impact on economy, of course. I think we became a little bit more resilient to all those interruptions of delivery change during the COVID crisis, but still the repercussions are to be felt. It's interesting what you say about Southeast Asia, moving closer to China. Interesting. I mean, China is also very much dependent on oil flow from Iran and the Strait of Hormuz. So what we are experiencing right now is really on geopolitical scale, showdown between the United States and China. And the last news which I followed were that maybe there is some sort of results to the negotiations at hand, but the news are so fragile and so volatile that you can't believe anything you read. So I'm very interested in what your ChatGPT tool tells us about the news situation in the world.
Yeah, it's very simple. You just need to give it a simple prompt. Compare the situation on date 1 with the situation on, and then date 2. And then you would see what it says. And it would go to do a deep dive on what is going on. So, yeah, that's my contribution. And because it doesn't, if you say, okay, the negotiation seemed to be this or that, that's based on headlines because you were not in the negotiations. So it's not really relying on headlines in a newspaper is not a good way to determine a state of a certain situation. But that one is surely responsible for everything that goes on here.
Yeah, but what's the database of this ChatGPT tool? So what data sources does it tap into?
Internet in the first place.
Yeah.
So what is available there? And I can read to you the list of public. You can also ask it because the ChatGPT would tell you where do you derive your data from, and it would say where it found the data. And this number of renowned magazines, among others, Wall Street Journal, then Al Jazeera from Arabia, then wait, let me see. I will tell you right away. I love this AI because, okay, Reuters, AP, Bloomberg, Financial Times, BBC, Al Jazeera, CNBC, and then the local websites of OPEC and IEA and EAI, which has something, is a oil manufacturer. And then also important maritime resources like Lloyd's List, Marine Traffic, IMF Port Watch, if they are available for that date. And it would, whenever it reports, it would tell you from where it has derived its information. So it's very open. It's not something that is hidden. No.
Say Martin Michael here.
Yes, I
So,
hear you.
yes. So keep in mind that there's several dimensions to the question of everything since March 1st. And by the way, you said March 7th, May 7th, all right, for your window. So you had a Freudian slip. But anyway, the people involved with econometric models, they do the same thing. And I don't think they use ChatGPT. They've got their own models. And let's just say that they may have 1,000 sources. Seriously. And they're setting economic policy for the Fed here in the US and all over Europe and all over Japan. So these models are dynamic. You would have to do your thing every second because any news item, okay? So our response on March 7th with the ocean-going vessels in the Strait, any one event, even how Trump feels when he wakes up in the morning, that goes into the models. The people in Wall Street also have models because the stock markets around the world move on news. It's called efficient market theory. So be careful. Don't call it AI. Just because ChatGPT can search, let's say, 15 or 20 sources on your list instantaneously and do it for March 1st and May 7th. That's interesting. But keep in mind, the other people doing that are doing it not only published in Reuters or CNBC, they're doing it for a proprietary base of clients that could be countries, could be investors, could be the US Fed. Econometric models have been done for decades, Mark, by DRI and Wharton, and I'm sure Rich knows all about econometric models. But people that are worried about the implications of the Iran war, keep in mind there are several dimensions. There's the ones that I'm involved with the Defense Department, Department of War. There's the economists, there are the financial people, there's the military muscle around the world, there's the energy. Now, keep in mind, what if ChatGPT could answer your question the day after 9/11 or the day after Pearl Harbor? So I don't think the Iran thing is as important as 9/11 was, okay? And by the way, the Mideast has been in turmoil for 50 years, Martin. Back when you were in your 20s, the Six-Day War, okay, the takeover of Kuwait. So, some of my clients in the last several weeks, asked me, so, how do you feel about not so much your innovation, but how do you feel about the investments in new technology as a result of the turmoil? And I said, look, energy, the people in China or Japan are probably a lot more worried about the closing of the straits than we are here in America. And the Europeans, your comment about Poland, and then I'll cut it off real quick. The reason Pratt & Whitney built a plant in Poland is economic stability. You don't have Somalians, you don't have Muslims, you don't have riots in the street, and the head of Poland gets on once in a while if you're a fan of YouTube. So, being Polish, I don't want to sound too biased. However, in the last 50 years and so forth, it's a far better place for stable industrial and innovation investment than other countries that are troubled with their borders, troubled with their stability, troubled with social unrest. So I just wanted to insert that comment. But so keep in mind, the economists and the Wall Street investors have models, and ChatGPT is kind of just like a big Google search, especially if you limit it to 12 publications like you have. And I tell clients all the time, AI is just software. If you put any more credence into it, you're asking it to be a human being, and it's not. So it's just software.
Yes, you're right. You're right, Michael, in many ways. I just want to say you don't need to know the entire picture in order to avoid stupid mistakes. And currently, a stupid mistake would be that you take on a major business venture, and that's what everybody thinks. And all what I want to say is to look at a bit deeper than just looking at headlines. And if you do that, then I believe then you're on a safe side nowadays, right? So currently, there's what I can say, yes, there are better models there, but what I can say is there would be a cash crunch very soon, in less than 6 weeks from now. And maybe not so much in the US, but I can promise you in Asia and maybe also in other countries of this world, maybe Europe. And I mean, Western Europe, not Eastern Europe. And that cash crunch is serious. It's going to be serious. And it would start as soon as the fuel shortages. And the fuel shortages are the critical thing. In our firm, we have people working in the Philippines, and the Philippines, they feel the first fuel shortages. That's what I can tell. And
well, Martin, jet fuel in Europe went up 100% on March 5th or so. And I think I sent the data to Roland. So, in my industry, the fuel price, because of the straits and all that, gasoline in California is up around $6.50 a gallon now. So the energy side of the turmoil is probably among the most significant things that are what are called exogenous events, right? So your part about cash crunch, even airfares around Europe are shooting up because fuel is number two versus labor in the airline industry. Um, so the doubling of fuel price is a big external shaking factor that's affecting commercial aviation all over the world. And it's not just doubled in Europe. It went from $2 a gallon to about $4 a gallon, or €4 a gallon. And I think I sent the link to Roland. That's a big deal. So automotive fuel is not going up 100% just in 2 months. Jet fuel is. It's a big deal.
So, I mean, if you plan something for your business, then it's always good to look at the big picture. And currently, you wouldn't expand because the risk is very high because of outer factors, and that not only applies to small fries like my firm, but also to much bigger conglomerates. And as Roland just mentioned correctly, that the big vehicle manufacturers, in Europe, they are suffering, and that is what drives 1/3 of the German economy. And then the second one's never talked about is chemical industry, and the third one, automation and mechanical engineering. So is investment goods for equipping productions. And what my colleague earlier today told me is that yes, Poland is recognized as a stable economy and still cheaper than Germany, and with many reliable and how to say, socially related people, because Polish are Catholics, and so are the Bavarians, and so is more, how to say, more compatible with each other than maybe with the new population in Germany that is brought in artificially. And yeah, so I can confirm all of what you say, but this is just recognizing the truth, right? And the impact for innovation means where where is going to happen what, and that's the basis for all the innovation, because ultimately innovation has two components: doing something new and making profit from it, and that's very often forgotten. And uh, I I had a talk this week with a leader of a public office that is in charge of innovation, and he couldn't define innovation. He was just dancing around and missing out on the profit element. And yeah, as long as you have free cash from someone, then you can do innovation for the sake of providing new stuff. But they always leave out the element of making profit. And in those environments of today, it's much more difficult to make a profit than, let's say, 10 years ago, because cash was so easily available to everybody.
Yeah, but when I am in touch with startups, I notice they are completely aware of the necessity to make profit. It's not like just 10 years ago where you started just for the fun of it because there was funds available. The startups of today, they have real business plans. They can tell us how they want to generate income. So I think the mindset has grown much more mature.
Okay.
So from that point of view, I'm optimistic that those startup founders and the teams in the startups try to build sustainable businesses. Although one of my worries is, and I think I mentioned that thought before, I miss the founders who really want to stay with their company for a long time. Very often there's a mindset that they want to have an exit after 3 years, then become millionaires, sail their yacht and whatever.
German imported screw.
What?
So-
Sorry, I didn't.
No, there was a noise in the background. Sorry.
Yeah, was that a comment or an unintended noise? I don't know.
No, this was the Bluetooth device spoke up, and I just silenced it. Sorry.
No problem. No, but that's my impression of the startup scene right at the moment. By the way, coming back to the automobile industry, I read some interesting news. Of course, German automobile industry has problems, especially with China, because the Chinese competition is very strong. But I think I don't have the data available. They made more sales in Europe themselves, which is actually a good sign because Europe is focusing on its own markets, which I think is very, very positive. Necessarily, of course, because if you can't sell in China so much because there's so much Chinese competition, you have to go to other markets. But supporting the own home market, the local continental market, is a very good sign for me. So I don't see everything in black colors. There are also some lights on the horizon.
Yep. The problem is what is always overlooked. Let's come back to that because over the past weeks I talk a lot about that, right? And I just repeat myself. 1 million people work in the German car industry OEMs. And now I need to correct myself. It's not 1 million, it's only 800,000. It was 1 million 7 years ago. And this year, the number fell from 800,000 to 700, whatever, 20,000. Please don't nail me on that. That's the manufacturers. And for each workplace at the OEMs, there are 3 workplaces outside that contribute to the same number of cars produced on German soil. That means multiply the number by 4, and then you have the people working in the automotive industry, either directly or indirectly. And I need to be a bit careful here because I get easily misunderstood. Those people that are not directly in the car industry work in companies that not only serve the automotive industry, but also other industries. Like, I don't know, mechanical engineering, automation, or whatever. But for a good part of their salary is drawn from working for a major car OEM. OEM is a manufacturer or a tier 1 supplier to the car manufacturing industry. And that now multiply 1 million times 4 is 4 million people. And about 7 years ago, there were 4.2 million cars built on German soil. That does not mean that the brands that build cars on German soil are limited to that production. That means they also have cars built outside of Germany. But as a German partner trainee and as someone who does business in Germany, I think in German numbers. And the next important figure is that 80% of the cars built on German soil are exported to outside of Germany, maybe to France, maybe to Italy, maybe to Poland, but the large bulk of it, 20%, went to the US. And this stopped last year, 2025, in April with the new tariffs. And within 1 month, the German car export declined by something like 60,000 vehicles per month, which is 800,000 vehicles per year. And that is what you have mentioned now, the Daimler truck section or whatever division or whatever you call it. They reduced the profit by 70%. They're still profitable, but much less than before. And that is mainly because there are no more Daimler trucks sold in the US because of the tariffs. And so these are the two. So when you now tell me that, yes, the German car industry thrives because the local sales is improving, yes, I understand they must do that, but the bigger picture is that a lot of the business is lost because export doesn't work anymore, because costs of cars built on German soil are so high, and they are no longer fit for being exported.
Yeah,
Hey,
but I
Mark.
also mentioned last week that it is also Mercedes or Daimler, which reacted to the situation in China. They announced that they will change their way of how to introduce new models and adapt to the peculiarities of the Chinese market. So I'm really old-fashioned when I buy a car, and I don't buy them very often because for me they are a means to get from point A to point B. I'm mainly interested in getting from point A to point B. And we know from especially Christoph Höring's reports in the past that the Chinese view their cars mainly as a movable computer, and they absolutely demand the latest innovations in computer technology and displays and cockpits and software. Okay, so German manufacturers start reacting to that and try to adapt their innovation policy to the Chinese market, which is a good sign, I think. I don't know how long
Say,
it will take.
Roland, I sent you
Yeah.
the link. Audi announced similar activity, probably because they looked over their shoulder and they saw Mercedes presentation. So I sent you the presentation of Audi China, and yeah, their cars are sort of a spectrum. Some of them are cars that look just like Audis in Germany or the USA, but that's just to the very wealthy Chinese car buyer, right? And the rest of them, they're trying to get more electronics so the darn dashboard looks like an iPad instead of a car, you know? And the back seat, I mean, you know, the entertainment, all that the Chinese are doing to make their cars like an electronic studio are either the envy of the world or the laughing stock of the world. And, you know, I mean, it's amazing when that high-end Chinese car that I guess Christoph mentioned, that's 130,000 euros or whatever. It's just for the very, very wealthy, but the backseat features are laughable. I mean, you know, I doubt that anyone would see that as a competitor in Germany with a Maybach, you know.
Yeah, so bad that Jürgen Brügel is not here because he's one of the main inventor of the BMW interior features for the back seats.
I remember that, Martin. But you know, the other thing I sent, I think, back and forth with Rich a little bit, the average liter size engine for the ICE engines produced for hybrids, let's say in China, is around 2.2 liters. And that is a very small four-cylinder engine by comparison. They're not even putting turbos on them. What they wanted to do is run a constant RPM. They're pushing for highest efficiency for their hybrids, because if that 2-liter engine is running at a peak of torque and horsepower curve all the time. So it's interesting. They claim to have 3 to 4% efficiency benefits on their internal combustion engines, but those engines have probably 20 or 30 years to go on quality and engineering. And I don't want to call them a laughing stock, but I doubt that hybrids with Chinese ICE engines are going to penetrate Europe or the US. They're just not there. They might be fine with batteries and electric motors and electronics and screens, but for hybrids, you need a good internal combustion engine. And you know, an SUV here or in Germany, the big Mercedes, whatever it's called now, you know, it may have a 3 to 5 or 6 liters, even bigger, even on their hybrid. The Chinese, I don't think, have any V8s in their automotive production right now. Everything is 4-cylinder from what I saw. And a lot of them don't even have turbos, so they're as slow as a skunk. But oh, they're a hybrid, they got nice batteries and they're low cost. And, you know, so I think the story that we had a couple of weeks ago, Martin, with you take the pure electrics, the golf cart kind of market, you take the hybrids, and the Chinese aren't making any piston engine cars exclusively. Everything I researched in the last couple of weeks, I don't see one BYD car that's just internal combustion engine. They're all hybrid or pure electric. So
Yeah.
There's range anxiety. There's many reasons why people like hybrids and plug-in hybrids. But pure electric, there's range anxiety. There's the cost of battery replacement. I think I wrote some of this to you and Rich and Roland. So, you know, the forecasters that are predicting worldwide the 80 million vehicles that are produced, what sort of future segmentation are we going to have? And the Chinese are just going to play in perhaps 20% of that addressable market. The Germans, the Brits, the Italians, the French, and USA car companies are attacking the rest of it. I think they know a lot more about the world preferences for internal combustion engine only, electric only versus hybrid. And that's you know that's something I think the Chinese people are putting their hands in their pockets, thinking they know how to do it. And I think they're missing the $80 million, or I'm sorry, 80 million cars and light trucks produced every year.
Okay.
They're gonna attack a small percent of it.
But what I have seen, and maybe I just see that Christoph Hering is here, that in China, the typical turnover or life cycle of an electric car is 2 to 3 years. Then it becomes more similar to my mobile phone than to a car. And that deeply, how to say, infringes my understanding of buying a car. I see a car as something that lives longer than 10 years. And suddenly seeing it being reduced to the same lifetime as my smartphone is something that creates bad feelings, I would say.
But Martin, last week you said by regulation it's 10 years. So in 2 to 3 years, did they change the battery or did they junk the car or sell it to an auction?
Now, what I read today is Matthias Weik on LinkedIn, is a quite famous German author, and I replied to his comment, and he said that average junk time for a Chinese car is 2 to 3 years.
Well, that's what I said last week. Is it a throwaway? Well, you know, the $130,000 one that Christoph mentioned, that's not going to be a throwaway. They're going to replace the battery or they're going to sell it as a used car. It's not going to be junked in 2 or 3 years, Martin.
I don't
So
live in China, do you?
I've been there many times. Okay. So, you know, it's a very, very different market. And even people
Yeah.
are questioning the fuel quality, internal combustion engines. The gasoline and diesel fuel is questionable. It can be contaminated with water. Unbelievable what the chemical tests are proving for the diesel fuel and petrol in China. It's horrible. So that's the other problem. You buy this car if it's a hybrid, and again, they don't have ICE only. So no wonder they're electric. They're refining and petrochemical, even their crankcase oil. You question, you know, you try and get your oil changed on a hybrid in China, and you question what the heck did they put in your engine? They don't have the infrastructure. It's just not there.
Yeah, but we have Christoph here.
Yeah. Until he answers, I think he clearly said there's government regulations that the lifetime of electric vehicles in China is limited to 10 years, which I find short, but okay. As far as I know, the numbers I'm aware of, amazingly, the batteries in electric vehicles have a relatively long lifetime. So there are the first long time studies about how much capacity is left after 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And it seems as if the loss of battery capacity is really minimal, which is a good sign. Coming back to your question, Michael, what happens if the Chinese throw away their cars? Let's assume they do it after 2 years. Well, maybe after 2 years, you still find a buyer of your used car. And when it comes to really exhausted battery cars, car batteries, sorry, there are lots of solutions around how to use them as storage for homes, stuff like that. So giving them a second life. Generally speaking,
but Roland, to replace the battery, Roland, if a BYD electric car, if it costs 40% of the price of the car to replace the battery, I think a guy told me the battery on a Tesla is $16,000. So even if it goes 7 years, be careful. And our cell phone, you know, it might degrade to 80%. We still keep using it. And I don't think there's much of an aftermarket for these batteries to become a electric supply in your house. But it's kind of a mystery to me. How can we either have throwaway cars in China where there is no aftermarket for batteries, or if the government says no, it's good for 10 years, what's the mean or the median life of a car in China? Now that Christoph's here, I'd ask Christoph.
Um, Sorry, I've just got a call here. That's why I mentioned that the average lifetime of batteries amazingly seems to be much longer than anticipated. So, well, if I buy a car, I usually buy a used car because considering my driving distances every day, it doesn't make sense to buy a brand new car. So, of course, if I bought a used electric vehicle, I'd be interested in a battery which has lots of capacity. It's absolutely correct what you said. I mean, the battery is the most expensive part in the car itself. So, if the battery doesn't has not a long life, I wouldn't buy a battery car, which I
If they're
don't.
lithium ion, Roland, like the Tesla or whatever, or you know, our laptops and our phones have lithium ion as best as I can tell. Not, you know, not NiCad or any of that. So the lithium ion technology is probably material and chemically related, and that affects battery life. So again, you know, laptops and phone batteries, they're probably good for 6 to 7 years, and then they drop. Their 80% capacity number drops, and my Apple says it's time for a new battery. Same thing with your Tesla. Same thing with electric cars. You know, guys like Rich know a lot more about batteries than me. But I think 6 to 7 years. But again, who wants a car where in 6 to 7 years you got to pop down $10,000 or $15,000 for a new battery? I wouldn't
No,
buy one.
no, you're absolutely right. Um, if the car lasts six or
Well, I
seven
think
years,
there's maybe another change that is coming, or something that needs to be considered. If you can hear me well, I think it's a similar number for how old or how soon cars get replaced. So I don't have an exact number, but I would assume it's around 3 to 4 years where the consumer is considering to buy a new car. And we have a big challenge with the secondhand market for automotive. So for most Chinese consumers, it's not very attractive to buy a secondhand car. And that's more on the culture side. They don't like secondhand. Think it's not worth it, or the quality, or they have trust issues. So they need to figure out a different way what to do with these vehicles. I think what needs to be considered here as well is that China is actually developing a lot of battery recycling capacities. So especially CATL as the largest battery manufacturer, they have almost an equal amount of recycling capacity for the amount of batteries that they produce. And they're quite strong. So I could also imagine that a lot of the cars, especially after 10 years, they will be just scrapped and they will recycle all the batteries and all the raw materials, and they have quite a high recycling rate. So that is more than 80% for the core materials. And for aluminum and iron and so on, it's more than 98% or so. So they have a lot of capacity to recycle these materials. And the other thing that we will need to see. Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to ask if someone needs a battery, do they get a deep discount by buying a recycled battery? Is it like half the cost to replace it versus a new battery?
As far as I know, when I was visiting the CATL battery factory, once they have recycled the materials, it's basically brand new.
So they basically grind it all up and get the chemicals. It's not like trying to save a battery and keep the same casing and all that. Okay.
No, they grind it down to the raw powder, and then they chemically separate all the raw materials, and then they build new batteries.
So they're selling it as a new battery. So BYD may still want the equivalent of 8,000 euros for that battery on their high-end hybrid car.
Yeah. Right.
That's expensive. That's a heck of a sinking cost for that car owner that only is going to keep it 3 or 4 years. Then in 3 or 4 years, they have to spend another 40% of what they did. The car may not even be paid for yet if they financed it. I mean, how can the Chinese
Yeah,
consumer
this is, I think,
justify?
well, I think we don't know it yet because the market is not old enough. I think also another factor is for, especially for the electric vehicles. Now the first generation of these very old electric taxis, they're going to be retired soon. And for most of the consumer cars that are very popular right now, they're just maybe 4 years into the market. So we still need a couple more years to really see how the market will respond. They will not be easy to resell if you have like a 5-year-old, 6-year-old electric car. It will be pretty difficult to sell them. So we will need to still wait and see what happens.
Yeah, plus there's this overlying feeling that having something secondhand is part of losing your face, right, in public or even to yourself. I don't know.
Yes, that also
So where
plays
are
a factor.
where are those cars going, Christoph? Okay, the number, Martin, you said 28 million cars are made right now per year in China. So if there's no secondhand market, when they're done, are they sending them to Pakistan or India or what? Where are the cars going? Are they all being scrapped?
Scrapped.
Well, how much of the 28 million are
Yeah.
export, Christoph?
No, it's not
How many-
28, it's 20 million. 20.
Okay, sorry, Martin. How many of the 20 million stay in China versus export? Maybe we should start with that.
I also don't have a number for this, but I'm also curious what is
I
happening with the
think,
cars. I mean, there is
Martin,
an
you had a
opportunity
number.
that
I,
Hmm.
No, I
I
don't
think
have
Martin.
because wait. I'm not a global car expert. I'm an expert for Germany. I can only
Well,
tell you.
there's some BYDs. I think they're in Texas. I think Rich
Yes.
knows this better than me. How much of BYD is sold in the United States? It's small, but I think there's dealers in Texas already, right?
Let me ask ChatGPT. How many cars manufactured on Chinese soil are exported?
You need to add second hand because if you just say brand new cars, it is a different number.
No, that would
Around
be the next prompt.
5.7.
How many first-hand and how many new and how many second-hand? Okay,
Yeah.
China exported around between 6.8 and 8.3 million vehicles per year. So twice as what is produced in Germany currently. Maybe, no, not twice. Two and a half times because we are down to 3 point something million in Germany.
But okay, Martin, if 13 million stay in China, where do they go when they're done after 3 or 4 years in the first owner?
How many used cars
Yeah.
are exported from China per year?
Well, one exciting aftermarket is the smaller cities. So you move from the tier 1 cities to tier 2, tier 3, or even tier 5 cities. And these are all cities that are not poor. They don't have so much money, but there are still hundreds of millions of potential customers. So
So we
could be
need
a
to
good
think
target.
we need to think about China as a conglomerate of independent states, right? That's what I experience all the time. That there are rich provinces or rich, I don't know how you call them, and then there are poor
Yeah,
ones.
city clusters, you could say.
Yeah.
Yeah, Martin, there's 30 cities that have population more than 5 million people. The Western provinces, only 10% of people have plumbing. So it's a very, very diverse economy.
And now you guess what? What is my favorite province of China? Is Yunnan. Yunnan reminds me all the time to my home because it's a very poor mountainous region with very simple and very friendly people and good food. And they're very poor. And you can still find trucks from 1950 that do a daily job there. And you can still find shepherds with sheep, flocks of sheep, and on the street, and you cannot advance fast because the flocks of sheep would block the street. And you are very patient. At least I am, because I know that from my home area. So now I have the figures from ChatGPT. It's from carnewschina.com. And in 2021, about 15,000 used cars were exported from China. 15,000. And in 25, they expected about 500,000 units to be exported of the 20 million produced. So less than 3%.
Yeah, but that's an interesting number. One of the things which made people hesitate to buy electric cars in the beginning of the electric vehicle area was they didn't know how long they would last. If your numbers are from, what was that, 2021, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So that was the onset of the EV car wave. And in the meantime, especially in battery technology, there has been tremendous progress. So 5-6 years ago, we were, don't fix me on the numbers, but people were happy if the car manufacturer said, okay, you have a range of 150 kilometers, 200 kilometers. Meanwhile, we have 600 kilometers, and I read stories about new cattle developments covering 1,000 kilometers or 1,500 kilometers. So battery technology has made a tremendous progress. And if that continues, then there might be a more viable market for electric vehicles as their second life. So if I buy a car which originally had a range of 800 kilometers at full capacity, and after 5 years it still has, let's say, 600 kilometers, then this might be a car which I could sell secondhand. Okay, there are these concerns about secondhand cars in Southeast Asia. I know that as well. But yeah, this might really change the numbers. So the second number, which you just quoted, Martin, expecting the number of used cars to rise to, what was that, 500,000? Makes sense, taking
No,
into
that's not,
consideration.
that's the export of new, Roland. That's not used. That's
Okay,
new
Martin.
export.
Okay, Martin, once again, the numbers. The first number of cars exported in 2021, used cars, 15,000. What was the expected growth of used cars exported to other countries?
2021, 15,000.
Yeah, okay.
2024, 436,000.
So
Martin, those are new or those are secondhand?
Used cars.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Okay.
So it's,
And of 20 million manufactured.
No, 20 million is new. So you're mixing
Yeah.
up apples and oranges,
Yeah,
guys.
but not
No.
because we're talking about a lifetime of 2 years or 3.
Well, and Roland, your point on range, okay? So there are three or four things that, of course, the car companies don't want to talk about. You want air conditioning, there goes 20% of your range. You want heat, there goes 30% of your range. So you got to think about the climate that these cars are sold to. And then the other thing is you may have fully highway miles, okay? The range on a car with Autobahn activity is a heck of a lot better than city streets and traffic. So the average Chinese person is not going to get on the equivalent of Martin on the Autobahn or me on the interstate. So your 600 kilometers, take it with a grain of salt, because you got to look at the usage profile of a typical car. And I think the numbers I saw from SAE years ago is 40% is highway, 60% is arterial and urban, where it's stoplights and traffic and rush hour. So there's where the range goes down the toilet. And again,
yeah,
air conditioning, age of the battery, and heat. In the United States, we do have winters, just like Martin has in Bavaria. You want heat, you want air conditioning, knock off 30% of your range.
okay. So I'm not a typical car user because I do have air conditioning in my car. I never use it. So I'm perfectly suited to climate change and global warming because apparently I appear to be adapted to tropical heat.
Well, in the US, we use it 80% of the cars use it for at least 40 to 50% of the year, heat or air conditioning. Okay. So from
Wow,
April
okay.
to, yeah, yeah. So the fuel economy, you can publish your range, but keep in mind, you got to figure out where is that car sold and how's it being driven. And again,
Yeah.
Autobahn and interstate is a small percentage, especially in countries like China.
Okay. If you drove an electric car at high speed at Autobahn, I think we both agree you have a range of 10 kilometers. We know what we can do on German
Well,
highways.
speed and wind resistance, Roland. So
Yeah,
you're right.
sure.
You're 600 kilometers. You better not go more than 60 kilometers per hour. And that's like a grandma driving. Martin drives at 150 kilometers an hour every day on the Autobahn, right?
No, I swim that speed because I'm in Singapore.
Yeah, but another aspect, if you have those second-hand cars, they are perfectly suited for urban traffic. So where you say, okay, I can't match the 250-kilometer range, but I don't need it. So the average car driver in Germany, I think he covers 30 kilometers a day. This is why electric vehicles are picking up in German cities right now, because they don't care if they don't have so much range. They drive the 30 kilometers, return at night, and charge the batteries overnight. No problem. I couldn't
Okay,
do that.
Roland. Okay, Roland. Here's another thing to consider. Ask where are the people charging? Do they go to charging stations and put their coins in? No. In China, most people live in high mid-rise apartments or whatever. There is no place to charge it. They park their car wherever they can. And again, you have to look about where do people charge, where do people live, and plug-in hybrids and overnight charging of your golf cart. You better have a place to charge it. So these
Yeah.
20 million cars or 12 million that stay in China, whatever the number is, you have to ask, where are these people, even the taxi cab guy, where's he charging his car overnight?
Yeah,
Where's he
you're
charging it at
There's
lunch
a
hour?
lot of charging stations. So basically all the compounds, they have parking garages -5 levels deep, and they all have underground charging stations for the cars. So you always have a Tesla station or one of the other EV charging stations. So in the big tier one cities, charging is not an issue. Especially if you look in Shenzhen, this is like the worst example. But in Shenzhen, you have a high-level supercharging station within 2 kilometers all over the city.
Yeah, I mean,
Is that for
problem
the
is,
wealthy,
that
Christoph? Is that
is
for the wealthy guy? Is that the wealthy guy, or is that the taxi driver?
no, everybody.
Oh.
Taxi drivers, everybody is charging basically in their basement, in their compound. There's also public charging stations. There are special gas stations with super fast charging stations. And then also for taxis, you have like special depot charging stations or just on the side.
If they go
So
super
charging
fast,
infrastructure is
if they go super fast, Christoph, does that take 50% of the life off the battery?
depends, I think, on the battery technology, like which car you're buying and what they have inside the battery. But
Yeah.
it can take anywhere between up to 30 minutes basically to get a good chunk of your battery full again.
of course, it really depends on the way of driving. I think the best mode of driving for a battery is constant speed, no accelerations, no decelerations. So if you're just swimming on the Autobahn at moderate speed, that's perfect. Stop and go traffic in the cities or sprints on the Autobahn are not very good. But Michael, you
Also
addressed,
to be considered in China, your total speed limit is 120 kilometers per hour. And most of the people are not driving over 100. That is either because they're scared to drive faster or because the traffic is so dense that you usually drive around 60 kilometers per hour. That is actually the average speed you get in a big city.
And it's very
So
much stop
nobody's
and
driving
go,
fast.
right? When I was in Chungking, it's 25 million people. I don't know how many cars. I can't imagine how many charging stations it would take for all the mid-rise apartment dwellers I saw in Chongqing, Christoph. It's not like Shanghai,
Yeah,
right? It's the biggest
of
city in
course.
China, right? Yeah. So somehow I can't imagine. And again, if it's gridlock congestion and these cars are stop and go for 60% of their life, it's just I don't know where it's going to end up in 5 years. You know, you take the 30th largest cities, and if they add another 20% of cars in population, I can't imagine where they're going to have enough money to have private garages to do their overnight charging. I mean, somehow the numbers don't make sense to me.
It's always the problem that the infrastructure has to adapt to the cars. Typical problem, you want to introduce a new technology, and the main argument against electric vehicles in the beginning was there are no charging stations, and there still are not enough charging stations. And I fully understand your argument about big cities of 20 million inhabitants. You cannot have 10 million charging stations. But in Germany, the situation, for example, is gradually improving. If I wanted to use an electric vehicle, I knew about one charging stations 200 meters away from here. It's almost constantly fully occupied. The owner of our office building won't allow electric vehicles in the deep garage because he says if fire lights up, the whole building goes down. Sorry, I have to leave because a call is coming. Sorry.
Yes, goodbye. Yeah, the main problems here. What I want to say is that different from the internal combustion engines, we are dealing here with a new problem, and the fact that 20 million cars in China are built per year, and they have an average survival rate of 2 years within China, and then they are no longer able to be sold there. That calls for, I believe that's a very serious challenge to the technology, a big bleeding neck to everybody. Because I wouldn't want to buy a car that lives only for 2.5 years, because my car is not part of my, how to say, visible life. So I don't need to impress people by driving a special car. And I believe that there are many people out there who have the same attitude towards what is a car and a usable car. So just the idea of buying a car that costs me something like a tremendous amount of my annual work income and scrapping it 2 years later, it just creates some allergy, and I don't want to do that.
Say,
But
Martin,
yes,
before we go, real
yes,
quick, you're 3 to 4 people. Can I say that that's 3 to 4 man years per German car? So if each of these
no,
workers,
no, because of the 3 to 4 people, one is working for the OEM, and they are not.
I understand, Martin. I wrote to you that the 3 to 4 people includes the tier one suppliers. So
Yes.
if they make an average mean or median of 40 or 50,000 euros per year, if they're in a union
Yes,
like
but then
GM
you have the
workers.
tier two, and they may work only 60% for that, and then the tier three, 30%.
Okay, so it's not 3 to 4 man years per car.
No,
In the US, it might be 7 cars per person, Martin. It is so different. What's the price of that car? The
interesting.
price of that
Let's
car.
let's dive in. Let's dive into that. I'm very interested, but you cannot misunderstand Germany. It's so different.
Well, you're not counting the people that work in a car wash or in the bank to finance the car. It's people that have hands-on labor, right? So the
Yeah,
sales per employee, like I'm trying to say,
yeah,
either
and
the car costs $300,000 or the people are making
and
$4,000
they
a year.
may be involved in providing um, uh, uh, a surface for a minor holder, a bracket of some part of the car, somewhere in the engine. And they do that for 10% of the annual work time. because they are built into a production line.
Well, somehow, that's why I reacted to your 3 to 4 man years per car.
No, it's not. No, the
It's
man years
not.
come from you, and it's a misunderstanding. I talk
No, it came from you. You took the gross number of cars and the gross number of people who work in the industry for OE and for the tier one. So it comes out to 3 to 4 people per car. And that doesn't make sense.
It makes sense because if a company loses 20% of its revenue because a dropout of a customer and they cannot replace that 20%, that would mean that as the revenues and the profit margins of the small and medium-sized enterprises, that this company is bankrupt within 6 to 8 months after that, if it's not compensated by something else, or they just cut costs by laying off people. And that's what is my concern. Germany will face a major layoff in those 3 industries, which is car manufacturing, chemistry, and mechanical engineering automation. Yeah, but we can elaborate that more next time. Thank you all for attending tonight, and see you next week. I find it always very interesting. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Rich, Roland, Christoph. All your contributions are very valuable. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks, Martin.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Take care,
Bye.
guys.
Bye.